Hello everybody, Akrai here, and yeah, welcome to a new tutorial series. This is for Four Kings Casino and Slots, and this is the game start guide and also blackjack tips. So, in this video, I will be teaching you, all of you guys who are struggling on Four Kings Casino and Slots, at least some general tips to help you win more chips in the game. And this is not a be-all end-all guide. This is just going to be a guide to help you guys gain more chips, or at least win more chips in the game. And we will be going over all the general tips. My general tips for roulette, craps, blackjack, big wheel 6 or big 6 wheel, poker, the slot machines, and also blackjack. And also war. Blackjack and war. We will also be going over some of the VIP games when I get my VIP status for Four Kings Casino and Slots again. But until then, we'll be going over some of the basic and more popular games. What I will be doing is teaching you guys all about bets, how to at least have some chance of increasing your wins and getting more wins than you ever will by lowering the house edge. And also just some general helpful guidelines to hopefully help you lower the house edge and win more chips than you ever would have thought of. Personally, this is not a be-all end-all guide, like I said, and for that very reason, it is not completely going to be like you know, like this is the number one cheat guide to get you to win all the time. After all, when you are doing video game gambling or even real life gambling, it comes down to luck. But hopefully by applying these tips, you too will also be able to lower the house edge and earn more wins than you ever would have. And with that being said, it means that you can probably apply this to real life. After all, most of these general tips are coming from real life gambling tips that I've gotten over the years, whether I was watching it for YouTube or just in general of what I've learned while playing all these games, or while playing this. And, you know, as I said, I'll also help you guys with bets, learning bets, what is the right way to bet to earn the most money, and also, you know, how to lower the house edge. While the house will always win. I mean, this is a known fact when you are in real life gambling or even in video game gambling. The house will always win. That is not the number one rule when you are sitting down and playing a casino game. Rather be Four Kings, or rather be video game casinos, or real life gambling. Either way, hopefully this guide will help you, and will help you at least end up winning more than you ever would have. And with that being said, we'll be moving on to the very first tips part of this the very first tips that I'm going to give you on the highest winning game, blackjack. Alright, so blackjack is by far the highest winning game in my opinion, because it's one of the only few games that you can lower the house edge to a minimal 1%. Now, what am I talking about when I say house edge? Well, for those of you who don't know, the house edge is basically how often the house is really going to win. And for the most part, the house edge is usually very, very high. But with my tips, you can pretty much lower the house edge. Now, let's first talk about betting in blackjack, as betting seems to be the one part where everyone in blackjack is going to go wrong, and it's pretty much where everyone is going to lose in blackjack overall. So yeah, what is the right way of betting? Well, there are many ways of betting. Personally, I will first teach you guys the wrong ways of betting. So the first method, and the first wrong way of betting, in my personal opinion, and from what I've seen, is a method that I call the go big or go home method. This is the worst method because it means that your chances of winning high and big amounts of money are good, but it also means that you'll be going home the moment you sit down. So whenever you sit down and you want to bet, The go big or go home method basically works like this. Let's say, for instance, you have 1,000 chips right now. So with that 1,000 chips, you say, okay, I'm going to use the go big, go home method. Well, I'm going to bet, let's say, 350 chips every time. So that's the go big for you. And let's just say that, for all purposes, maybe you win a few times using that method. But in the end, most of the time, more or less, with the go home method, you will always lose. By the time you bet that 350 chips and you start going on a big losing streak, you're going to be run out of caps before you know it. And that's pretty much why the go big, go home method is not a very good method to use, especially when you are betting in blackjack, as it makes the house edge much higher than anything. And I personally wouldn't suggest using this method unless you absolutely have money or chips to burn like crazy. The second method I'm going to be talking about is another type of method, kind of like the go big, go home method, but this method is more of a method that most people will do to try and even themselves out at the end of the day, to try and cut their losses. And this is what we call the double method, the double down method, or at least I'm calling it the double down method. What is the double down method? Well, when you're betting, let's just say when you first sit down, the double down method is basically like this. So you have 1,000 chips, like I said in my previous example. Well, the double down method works like this. Let's say your first bet is 100 chips. And let's say you win a few times at that 100 chips. Okay, great. You're up about 200 chips at that point. But the double down method, in my opinion, it works like this. And it's basically, let's say you finally bet another 100 chips, but you lose. But you end up losing. Well, this is how the double down method works. You ended up losing, so now you want to make up those chips. So basically, you bet 200 chips at that point to try and even out the odds or even for your losses. And let's say that you won that time. Well, the double down method worked for you that time. But let's just say you lose again after another few hands. So you try the double down method again to try and cut your losses. So of course, once again, you bet 200 chips. And of course, you lose again. Then you double down again. And now you're betting 400 chips to try and make up for the lost 200 chips and the lost 100 chips that you just lost, and the lost 100 chips that you lost earlier. And that's pretty much how the double down method works. Eventually, the double down method becomes so strenuous on your chips that you end up walking off the table with absolutely nothing, and you have more losses than you do wins. And that's pretty much the double down method. The last method that many people use, which is also kind of a bad method when you are betting, is something that we call the high-low. It's something that I call the high-low method. And the high-low method is basically like this. You start off with a low bet, then maybe you win a few, and then all of a sudden you go, okay, I've won a few. Let's go high. Let's bring it up to, like 1,000 chips. Because let's say that you won like 3,000 chips at some point in time. And then you keep it at the 1,000 chips method for a long period of time. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, I'm now down to only 500 chips. What do I do? Okay, I'm going to go low again and build my chip stack up. And this is the high-low method, basically. It's something that I used to do, and it's a mistake that I used to make a lot, but I don't make that mistake anymore. So now let's talk about the right betting methods. There are a few right betting methods, and there are a few methods that actually work to help you bet correctly. It depends on how you want to play. Are you an aggressive player, or are you wanting to be cautious? That's the first question you gotta ask to figure out which one of these right betting methods are right for you. The first right betting method I'm going to talk about is a static bet. The stack bet is basically where you choose, okay, I have 1,000 chips, I'm only going to bet 100 chips and that's it. And that's the stack method. You're never going to progress, you're never going to degress. You're always going to stay at that 100 chips, and in the end, this is a very cautious method. A very cautious method for some people. Now, you don't have to use 100 chips, I'm just stating 100 chips as an example. The other method that works for some people is what we call a win-lose method. So the win-lose method, or is what I'm going to call the win-lose method. So the win-lose method basically works like this. Let's say you have 1,000 chips again, and let's say you bet 50 chips. Okay, you won once, you won twice. Okay, you won 2 times. Now you want to progress your bet up to, like, let's say 150 chips, which is 100 chips more. Let's say you win twice again. You progress your chips to another 100, and now you're up to like 250, and so on and so forth. That's the win-lose method. The moment you lose, that moment is when you go back down to the 50 chips. And in the end, that is a great method to win because you do progressively gain more chips over time. The other method is a progressive bet method, which is the method that you will kind of have seen me use here in the example of this video. And it's basically a method where you choose your base number bet. In my case, I'm choosing 900. Then every time I win, I progress the bet up by X amount. In my case, I've been progressing the bet up by 500 every time. And every time I keep winning, it keeps progressing up by 500. And that's the progressive bet method. It's a great method that works, and it's a safe method, and it'll end up making you win more than you'll ever expect, especially if you go on a winning streak. Now, let's talk about the second thing, which is how to play Blackjack. Alright, so how to play Blackjack. I know what you're thinking, Akai, but I already know how to play Blackjack, and yes, many people probably do already know how to play Blackjack. This is, it's not a hard game to learn, but what I'm going to teach you are tips to help you lower the house edge and possibly win even more than you ever would have expected. I mean, after all, if you're one of those people who want to win chips or win big, then these tips are probably going to be tips that will be very helpful to you. Honestly though, I can't say that these tips are known by everyone. In truth, I don't believe everybody knows all these tips. So hopefully these tips will help you make better moves and win more than anyone else. So yeah, let's get started. Tip number 1, 11s. Now, I know what many of you are thinking. Why are 11s important? I mean, if I just hit, there's a good chance that that I can hit again if I don't get 21. But in most cases, this is not the best idea. In my opinion, and in the general opinion of many expert blackjack players, you should always double down on an 11. No matter what, you should always double down on an 11 because you never know. 11s could end up being a 21, and if you always double down, you always have a chance of doubling your money no matter what. So with that being said, you know, always double down on an 11. I know it may seem like, oh, you may be thinking, oh, but Akai, I can't hit again if I double down on an 11, and yes, that's true. But think about it. If you double down on an 11 and you win, you just doubled your money instead of just trying to hit, hoping to get a better number or a better, result. Tip number 2. Now this is a slightly unknown tip, and only many dealers may know this tip, but the dealers at blackjack tables will never tell you this tip at all. There are very few blackjack dealers who will tell you this tip. A few of them are on YouTube, but I'm going to tell you this tip to try and make you a better player. First of all, when it comes to playing 21 or blackjack, it's not about getting 21. While yes, that's the ideal number we want to get in blackjack, it's not where we want to be. your best idea in Blackjack is to, of course, only beat the dealer. Yes, you heard me correctly. Just being the dealer. So, for instance, let's say you have a 11 at the start. The dealer has a blank number and a free, for instance. Well, you definitely want to double down on that 11, like I said before. But your idea is to just get better than that free. Remember, think worst case scenario. In this game, in Blackjack, always think worst case scenario. And the worst case scenario is the dealer has a 14. So you'll want to just get higher than a 14. And that's the secret that many Blackjack dealers may know, but they'll never tell you. But as a player, when you come to sit down at the table, they will never tell you. So I'm telling you, as an experienced player, just all you want to do is beat the dealer. So for instance, if the dealer has a 2 and a blank number, think that it could be a soft 13. Always think worst case scenario, and just think, okay, I just want to be a 13. If I get higher than a 13, or if I can get higher than a 13, then I'm good. So yeah, that's one major secret that'll help you win in the game of Blackjack and lower the house edge. Like I said, just you only want to get higher than the dealer. So yeah, with that being said, let's move on to my third tip of the day. Alright, third tip of the day, 16. If you ever get a 16, this is a real hard number to play with. Some people immediately think, okay, I want to deal out even higher than a 16. And this is when people make the mistake. Most people think that if they have a 16 and they're going against a 7, an 8, and 9, a 9, or a 9, then they want to get higher than that, a 7, 8, 9, or 10. Then they want to get higher than that. Now, this is just a mistake. Personally, if you can surrender your cards, then I would highly suggest you surrender them. What does surrender mean? Well, surrendering your cards just means you get rid of half your bet. You basically say, nope, I don't want these cards. You give your cards back to the dealer, and basically, you surrender half your bet to the dealer while keeping your other half. Now, this is always a good idea if you have a 16, because you're probably not going to win that hand. Even if the dealer does have a worst hand, you probably will make a smarter move by surrendering your bet and just taking half your bet instead of playing it out and losing all your bet. Alright, so moving on. Tip number 4. Tip number 4 is double aces. Now I know, double aces are kind of a rare ordeal, and you'll rarely see double aces. But if you do ever get a double ace, I would highly suggest you just split them. While you won't be able to hit again after you split your double aces, you have more of a chance of actually getting a double 21 or better than playing out the double aces as a single hand. This also can lead you into having a worse hand. With 2 aces, you'll run into a possible problem with number 16. In Blackjack, number 16 is a very bad number for you to have. And unless the number you get number 16 and the dealer has a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, or a 6, then I would highly suggest that this is that you don't play that out. You bust yourself. You basically bust yourself if you can't surrender. Which also leads me to my number 16 in the opposite run. This is my 5th tip. Number 16 on the opposite run. So if you are running into another number 16, and let's say it's a 7, a 8, a 9, or a 10, or even an ace, and let's say that you accidentally got a 16 while trying to get a better number than the dealer, I would highly suggest you just bust yourself instead of stopping at 16. 9 out of 10 times, if not more, you'll always have the dealer will always have a better card than you, under that 10, that ace, that 7, that 8, or even the 9. So that's my high suggestion. And that leads me into when to double down. my sixth tip, which is when to double down. When to double down. Now this is a bit of a hard decision. Doubling down is a very hard decision, and like I said, when you do want to double down, you always want to double down on 11, on an 11. That's don't ever not double down on an 11. But there are other times where you should double down. Alright, so when else should you double down? Well, let's say you have a 10 and you see a card between 10 or 1, 2 to 10. If you see a card between 2 to 10 and you have a 10, go ahead and double down. You never know. You may get 20. You may get 20 and you may be able to double up your money. The other times you should double down are, for instance, if you have a 9. Now, with a 9, you'll only want to double down on a 9 if you see a card between the a number 2 to a number 9. Otherwise, if the card is a 10 and you have a 9, don't bother doubling down at all. And the last time, and this is kind of an exceptional one, is if it's an 8. Now, an 8, it all depends. Personally, I would only recommend you double down on an 8 if you see anything between a 7, a 2 to a 7. Otherwise, I highly wouldn't recommend doubling down. And, yeah. And then it leads me into my last tip. My last tip on how to play. And that's splitting numbers. Well, there aren't many times you should split cards. Personally, many people think that when they have two 10s, if they split it, they'll have a good chance of making a double 20. This is untrue. If you do have two 10s, whether it's in the form of two 10s, two kings, two queens, two jacks, or even two jacks, I would highly recommend you don't split them. This is a common mistake that many blackjack players make because they think, oh, I can double my money if I split these two 10s for a double 20. 9 out of 10 times you will never win that double 10 split. I will tell you that from experience. Do not make that mistake. My other tip is always split aces, as I told you before, and the other time you should split anything is a double 8. If you have a double 8, it makes a 16. I would highly suggest you split those, even if it's a low, no matter what card the dealer is showing, because you can get better numbers or better results from splitting those 8s. And those are all my tips on how to play. So yeah, hopefully those all helped you. I personally would highly suggest that you use them because you'll find that you'll win more often than less from it. My last tip is house edge, how to lower it. Well, honestly, I've told you all the ways to lower the house edge, and in the end, if you utilize all my tips, you should be able to win almost as much as you can. You should be able to win more than you ever expected, and it should be able to help you raise up your chips and your money even higher than you think. After all, if you utilize all my tips and you give them a chance, you'll almost always win your hand, or even better. Some other tips I could give you, and these are kind of interesting tips, is if for any reason you lose when you're playing with other players, don't get mad at the other player. I mean, seriously, they're going to play their own way. And as long as you stick to my rules, my style, and my tips, as long as you stick to what I've given, stuck to what I've given you, you should almost always come out on top. And eventually, those people that you are playing with will lose enough caps or enough chips that they'll probably quit the game. They'll probably leave the table for one reason or another. I mean, my highest suggestion is if you want to win and you want to get more chips than you'll ever expect, I mean, stick to my tips. Stick to my tips. Don't differentiate from them. Even if someone who has more money than me or has more money than you says, oh, no, if you shouldn't stick to Akurai's tips because Akurai doesn't know what they're doing. They've not won big And the truth is, I've won big. If you've been paying attention to my video and been watching the video in the background, you can see my results. I mean, my results in this video are proof that it does work. My tips do work. My tips will get you more chips than you'll ever expect. I mean, seriously, if you've been paying attention, you will see that I'm actually earning more chips than anyone else. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, as long as you stick to my tips and you stick to my what I've told you, you're always going to win. I mean, you can see if you watched this whole video through, or if you've been paying attention to the background video, you can see video proof that these tips do actually work. I mean, they're tips that actually work. They've worked, and you can see it here. So in closing, I mean, don't listen to anybody who may think they know how to make big money, how to make you know, lots of chips. I mean, you know, in the end, they really don't know. They may not know as much as I do. I've given you some secrets that only a few blackjack players may give you, that only a few dealers may ever give you. And in the end, these are tips that have worked for me. I mean, as you can see, it's worked for me. It's not failed me, and you know, as long as you stick to the plans, you stick to the guns and what I've told you, you'll almost always come out on top compared to every other player. And, you know, in the end, that's the best way to win. So, if you stick to my tips, you should see a very low chance of the house or you running out of chips. And, yeah, as long as you stick to the rules and you stick to the way I've been playing. Alright, I forgot to add a 7th tip when I was talking about this, but my 7th tip, and this is kind of also another one that I should talk about a little bit, is soft hands. Now, soft hands are kind of a, if you will, interesting decision again, but soft hands, it really depends on how it goes. For instance, when it comes to soft hands, you'll want to decide based on the cards. So, for instance, if you get like an ace and a 5, and let's say it's like a 10 that the dealer is shown, you'll probably want to play out that soft hand until you get 20 or 21, or you'll want to play that soft hand until you get to a hard 20. But soft hands, it's always kind of an interesting choice to play with. And the only times I would highly recommend stopping on a soft hand is if, for instance, you have a soft 18, a soft 19, or a soft 20, and the cards are anywhere from a 2 to a 7. A 7, an 8, or a 9. And of course, soft 20s you always want to stop no matter what, but personally, soft hands, it's just, I would highly suggest you play them out if the dealer is showing anything between a 7, an 8, and a 9, or a 10, and you have not reached the 18, 19, or 20 yet. But that's my rules on soft hands. But yeah, thank you everybody for watching me, and yeah, until the next one, this is Sakurai signing out.